Narrator, tone, serious in the dim light of our bedroom. I opened my eyes to find my wife, Emily, lying beside me in a lace-trimmed nightgown, half revealing her chest.
Emily, tone, gentle, honey.
Her voice was gentle, but there was a cold undertone.
Emily, tone, gentle, do you remember I once told you that I have a special someone in my heart?
Her delicate fingers slipped into my nightshirt, probably an attempt to distract me and achieve her own goals. I calmly pulled her hand out and responded simply.
Me tone, serious.
I knew Emily always had someone special in her heart. Unfortunately, that person had already gotten married before we did, so she married me reluctantly. Emily's eyes lit up at my response, and she shyly continued.
Emily, tone, shy, James has divorced that woman, and I want to.
Emily hesitated, realizing the absurdity of her statement. I decided to give her a little push.
Me tone, encouraging baby, whatever you want to do, I will support you. I told you before we got married that you could make all the decisions.
A trace of guilt crossed Emily's face, but joy soon replaced it. She sat up, pulling me up from the bed, her eyebrows filled with happiness.
Emily, tone, excited honey, then I'll just say it.
Me tone, serious.
Emily, tone, serious, I want to get a hymenoplasty. James has a bit of a thing for virgins. If I want to be with him, I need to get it done first.
Emily watched my expression intently. I remained expressionless, making her a bit uncertain. She confidently used my words against me.
Emily, tone, hopeful, honey, you said you would put me first in everything. This time, I really want to fight for love. You will support me, right?
Emily looked at me with expectant eyes. I smiled self-deprecatingly, remembering my tragic end in my previous life when I tried to stop her.
Me tone, pretending to be disappointed but understanding, baby, I support you. Go ahead and pursue your love boldly.
With my support, Sophia completely relaxed and became cheerful.
Thank you, honey. Once I win over James, we'll get a divorce. Then you can also pursue your own happiness, and we'll both have a wonderful future.
I listened, feeling both sorrowful and amused. In my previous life, when Sophia brought this up, I didn't agree. After all, it sounded so absurd. I was secretly heartbroken for several days, racking my brain on how to win back Sophia's heart. By a stroke of luck, I discovered that Sophia's ideal man, James, was not someone to entrust her life to. Despite his morally corrupt and violent nature, he was very good at pretending.
James's ex-wife had left him because she couldn't endure his abusive behavior. Upon discovering this, I thought it was my chance to win Sophia back. Suppressing my inner joy, I quickly called to tell her the truth. Unexpectedly, by then, Sophia had already secretly undergone the procedure. When I made that call, she was in bed with James, deeply entangled. But I didn't give up. I repeatedly warned Sophia that James was not a good person.
I've known James longer than you. I trust his character. Besides, James hit his ex-wife because she was unfaithful. I love James so much, he would never hit me. Michael, you keep bad-mouthing James. Are you jealous of our love?
Hearing this, I felt both sorrowful and helpless. A woman in love can't be reasoned with. I eventually gave up trying to persuade Sophia. But James targeted me.
At that time, James didn't know my true relationship with Sophia. He thought I was just a suitor and became displeased. He secretly had me kidnapped and violently assaulted. Fists, clubs, even electric shocks were used. After beating me to the brink of death, they discarded my body in the wilderness. And Sophia, from beginning to end, watched coldly without stopping them. Perhaps she thought that with my demise, the time bomb threatening her relationship with James was diffused.
James, you love me so much. From now on, I'll only be yours.
As my breath faded, I heard her say this sweetly. She had turned my demise into proof of James's love and care for her. I was filled with resentment and anger. Fortunately, I was reborn. This time, I won't let those two get away with it. The next day, Sophia, a woman of action, called me at noon.
Can you take a leave from work and accompany me to the local private hospital for the procedure?
She claimed it was my obligation since I was her first. I felt a wave of nausea but complied.
What is your relationship with Emily?
I started to say husband, but Sophia urgently nudged me.
Brother.
Sophia had assumed the role of a single woman, asking me to pretend to be her brother. The doctor gave us a peculiar look before asking Sophia to change and lie on the operating table. Sophia's practiced movements reminded me this wasn't her first time. She had done it once before our wedding, as I learned from her unfaithful ex-boyfriend's message. The procedure took an hour and a half. Afterward, there was no need for hospitalization. We rested on a bench in the corridor. Checking the time, I knew it was about right. James hurriedly arrived the next second.
Emily, are you feeling unwell? Why did you suddenly come to the hospital?
James's sudden appearance made Sophia's face turn pale.
James, why are you here?
I had subtly informed James using Sophia's phone.
Emily, who is this?
Sophia glanced at me, signaling with her eyes not to say anything.
This is my brother, Michael.
Michael? My surname isn't Emily's.
Since when did you have a brother?
He didn't press further but looked up and saw the department we were in, his face darkening.
Emily, you and your brother are here for the obstetrics and gynecology department?
No, James. Don't misunderstand. I just had a stomachache. My brother was with me at the gastroenterology department, and we just came here to rest.
James's expression softened but he muttered.
Is that so?
He looked at me, and I smiled back. Today's incident would undoubtedly plant a seed of doubt in his mind. To my surprise, after leaving the hospital, Sophia didn't go with James. Instead, she came with me, using the excuse of visiting her parents.
That was so scary. Why did James suddenly show up there?
I remained calm and asked.
Why didn't you go with him just now?
James had been fussing over Sophia, acting like a newlywed couple deeply in love.
Well, last time we met, James wanted to be intimate, but I made an excuse to wait until next time. But I just had surgery, and I'm still sore down there.
I couldn't help but let out a cold chuckle. After dropping Sophia off at home, I packed a few clothes into a bag. As I was about to leave, Sophia lay on the couch, sweetly scrolling through her phone.
Bring me a durian milk crepe from that shop in the west part of the city when you come back.
We lived in the east, but she insisted on the taste from that specific shop in the west. In the past, I would have gone without a second thought. Now! Only a fool would do that. She was so absorbed in her phone conversation that she didn't notice anything unusual about me. Leaving the house, I went to my parents' place. I straightforwardly told them I wanted a divorce from Sophia.
You should have divorced her long ago. Emily never loved you.
I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It's true that those involved are often the last to see the truth. I met Emily during college through a mutual friend. My first impression was that she was very beautiful, with fair skin and a tall, slender figure. The next time I saw her was at a convenience store. Her boyfriend had cheated on her, and she was quietly crying with her head down on the table. She looked so pitiful. In that moment, I fell for her unexpectedly. I started pursuing Emily, taking her out for meals, chatting, driving her around for trips, watching movies and concerts together, and writing her love letters every day. Her smiles became more frequent. The day we got together, we were making handmade rings. After finishing, she suddenly kissed me, her eyes filled with shyness and sweetness, and said,
Let's be together.
At that moment, I felt like the happiest person in the world. But in the end, I was just a trivial amusement for her. She never loved me. When Emily called, I was out having a team-building dinner with my colleagues.
Michael, why aren't you home yet? I'm starving here. Angry.
I held my wine glass, indifferent. Perfect timing. Let your dear James bring you food. Meeting your lover will only strengthen your bond. Unfriendly.
There was silence for a few seconds. Then Emily suddenly laughed happily.
Michael, are you jealous? Cheerful.
This is my fault.
Michael. Serious.
A clear, cold voice came from beside me. I turned to see Jessica, the PR director. Before I could respond, Emily, who had heard the voice, reacted first.
Michael. Are you with another woman? Shouting.
I remained silent. Honestly, I couldn't understand where Emily got the nerve to question me like this. She openly flirted with James in front of me, and I never questioned her like this. When Emily didn't hear me respond, she started anxiously shouting my name over the phone. She told me to come home immediately and not to flirt with other women. In my days, Jessica took my phone and hung up without a word.
Trouble in paradise? Slight smile, Mr. Zhou, you've always been so confident. I've never seen you so down before.
Indeed. I had already suffered enough in my previous life. This time, I wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. With that thought, I took out my backup phone, edited a few photos, and sent them to James. It was time to settle that painful old score. After sending the photo, I turned off my phone completely. Just then, a young girl who had recently joined the company sat down next to me, glancing at Jessica and then at me.
Boss, Director Jessica, what are you two smiling about?
I was taken aback and instinctively looked at Jessica. In my memory, Jessica rarely smiled outside of work or client meetings. The young girl suddenly took out her phone and snapped a picture. She quickly sent the photo to my WeChat.
If I didn't know you were already married, boss, I'd definitely ship you and Director Jessica based on this vibe.
I smiled wryly, but noticed that after the young girl said this, Jessica's smile faded a bit, and she looked somewhat forlorn. A thought crossed my mind.
That night, after the team building event, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to another property I owned to spend the night. I had a good night's sleep and turned on my phone in the morning. Instantly, numerous missed calls and messages popped up, all from Emily. I didn't want to deal with it, but the phone rang again. I slowly answered.
Honey? You finally answered. Why was your phone off?
The battery died. It turned off automatically.
Why didn't you come home? Honey, I'm so upset. I feel like I'm losing James.
What happened?
Emily cried for a while before explaining that last night, James suddenly sent her some photos. The photos were of me and her, taken a long time ago, looking very intimate, not something siblings would take.
James called and questioned me. He sounded so disappointed. What should I do? I don't want to lose him.
Just say the photos are doctored, not real.
Emily paused, then stopped crying.
Right, why didn't I think of that?
Because you're guilty, I thought to myself. Emily hung up abruptly, clearly to explain to James. I didn't care and went to work as usual. However, this incident would likely make James even more suspicious. I returned home in the evening. As expected, Emily was holding her phone, her face beaming with joy. Seeing me come in, she quickly ran over and wrapped her arms around my neck.
Honey, you were right. I explained everything to James, and he believed me.
That's good.
I loosened my tie to create some distance.
But haven't you thought about who might have sent the photos to James?
Her expression changed, hesitating, she probed.
Honey, it wasn't you, was it?
I looked at her, smiling without saying a word. Emily's face visibly turned pale. She was scared. After all, if she wanted to keep her affair with James a secret, I couldn't be a hindrance. If I had any doubts, her brave pursuit of love might come to an abrupt end. Tears began to gather in Emily's alluring eyes. Seeing that I had frightened her enough, I gently pulled her into my arms and patted her reassuringly.
Silly girl, I love you so much. I would do anything for you, even risk my life. How could I possibly do such a thing?
There was no warmth in my eyes, but my tone was gentle. Emily let out a sigh of relief, playfully hitting me.
Honey, you almost scared me to death.
Emily believed my words without hesitation. It wasn't surprising. After all, in the past, I loved her so much that I was willing to risk my life for her. During a trip, we encountered a robbery. Initially, I thought it was just about money, but they also had their eyes on Emily with ill intentions. I resolutely told Emily to run while I fought off 3 men alone. By the time the police arrived, I had been wounded, but fortunately, the injury wasn't fatal. During that time, Emily was clingy and considerate. She said that no one had ever treated her as well as I did, to the point of risking my life. My love for her made her feel secure and confident, and she believed my words without question. Thinking about this, I suddenly remembered something. Pushing Emily away, I asked,
When I was in the hospital, did you bring me porridge every morning?
Emily looked confused.
What porridge?
I was momentarily speechless, feeling a bit dazed. During my hospital stay, many times when I woke up in the morning, there was porridge on the bedside table. I had assumed it was from Emily. But now, it seemed it wasn't.
Is something wrong?
Nothing.
I went to the bathroom to take a shower. Halfway through, Emily suddenly started banging on the bathroom door, making a loud noise. Annoyed, I opened the door, and Emily was holding my phone, tears in her eyes, angrily questioning.
Michael! Do you have another woman outside?
On my phone was a chat interface with a young girl from the company. In the chat box were photos she had taken of me and Jessica during a team building event.
Is this woman from your company? Or someone else? Michael! You betrayed me!
Seeing her furious expression, I suddenly felt like laughing. I snatched the phone back from Emily and, for the first time, spoke to her coldly.
Let's not even discuss that I have nothing to do with her. Even if I did, what could you say? Emily, you should be clear about who betrayed whom first.
I ignored Emily's shouting and crying, went to the bedroom to change clothes, and prepared to leave with my suitcase. Emily hurriedly hugged me from behind.
Where are you going? Are you going to find that woman? I won't allow it.
Emily, you can't expect to have double standards.
Pulling her hands away, I said,
Let's live separately until our divorce is finalized.
With that, I resolutely left the house, ignoring Emily's frantic screams from behind. I understood that her reaction wasn't because she suddenly realized she loved me. She just saw me as her possession and wouldn't allow anyone else to covet me. However, I didn't expect Emily to go this far. The next day at work, a colleague rushed into my office.
Director Jessica has been splashed with water and slapped by a woman downstairs.
I hurried downstairs, and sure enough, it was Emily. Unwilling to give up, she had come to the company with the photo of Jessica and me, demanding answers from the receptionist. Seeing her hostile demeanor, the receptionist quickly called Jessica. When Jessica came downstairs, Emily immediately splashed her with water and slapped her before Jessica could react. When I arrived, Jessica had Emily's wrist restrained. Emily, being weaker, couldn't break free. Seeing me, Emily's eyes lit up.
Honey. Look at her, she's bullying me.
Jessica also looked at me, her expression filled with grievance and confusion.
Honey.
Before she could finish, a loud slap echoed. Emily screamed. I was stunned. Jessica, expressionless, had slapped Emily back. Emily, furious, tried to retaliate. Jessica, annoyed, pushed her away. Unexpectedly, Emily slipped and did a split on the spot. The next second, a stain of blood appeared on her white skirt.
Is she pregnant?
No, don't worry, before asking a colleague to accompany Jessica away.
Emily wasn't experiencing a miscarriage. She was just still in recovery and had overexerted herself. Emily anxiously scheduled an appointment with the doctor, hoping to undergo the procedure again. However, the doctor informed her that multiple procedures in a short period were not advisable.
What should I do, honey? I can't undergo the procedure again.
The doctor glanced at both of us. Last time we came as siblings, and now she was calling me honey. The doctor's eyes seemed to say, I knew it. As we left the hospital, Emily was so anxious that she kept muttering, which was quite annoying. Just then, James called.
Sweetheart, I've prepared a candlelight dinner for tonight, just waiting for you to come.
James's tone was suggestive, and any adult could understand the implication. Emily hesitated for a long time, not daring to speak.
Emily, you're not going to stand me up, are you?
No, of course not. James, I'll come. Wait for me.
After hanging up, Emily grabbed my arm.
Honey, help me one more time.
I didn't ask how to help, I just agreed. I pretended not to see the fleeting determination in Emily's eyes. A woman crazy in love, she was in for a rough time.
That evening, I accompanied Emily to the private dining room she had booked with James. James's face soured a bit when he saw me.
Sweetheart, this is supposed to be our private gathering. Why did you bring your brother?
My brother said he wanted to check things out for me. Besides, last time someone sent you photos of me and my brother, and you got suspicious. I'm here to prove myself.
Emily's words were smooth and convincing, but James didn't seem pleased. However, perhaps thinking about what was to happen that night, he held back and extended his hand.
Last time at the hospital, I didn't formally introduce myself. I'm James, Emily's boyfriend.
I shook his hand politely and slowly said, I'm Michael, Emily's.
During the pause, I clearly saw James's brow furrow, and he tightened his grip. Emily stood stiffly, her smile barely holding.
Brother.
Emily breathed a sigh of relief. But the next second, her expression changed.
Michael? Natsu Michael? Emily, did I remember wrong, or did you say it wrong?
My parents are divorced. My brother took our father's surname and I took our mother's. Either way works.
It made sense. James had to suppress his emotions again. At the dinner table, perhaps driven by male pride, James kept giving me challenging looks whenever Emily served him tea, adjusted his sleeves, or passed him food. He didn't care that I was there as Emily's brother to check things out. Emily's cautious and guilty demeanor was a novelty to me. In front of me, she had always been arrogant and entitled. I was always the one serving her. She had never treated me like this. But it didn't matter. I excused myself to the restroom and sent a few photos. When I came out, Emily was waiting outside, her eyes angry and dissatisfied.
Honey, what's wrong with you today? Suddenly saying your name is Michael almost exposed me. Luckily, I reacted quickly.
My name is Michael. That's who I am.
But
Emily, instead of blaming me, you should worry about yourself.
what do you mean?
I just smiled without answering. Emily sensed something was wrong and hurried back to the private room. As soon as I opened the door, a cup shattered at Emily's feet.
Ah!
Emily screamed in fright. I followed closely behind and saw Jane sitting in the private room with a dark expression.
James. James.
She bit her lip nervously, asking, "What's wrong?" James stood up abruptly and walked over quickly. Emily, seeing his terrifying expression, took a few steps back. But James's target was me. He grabbed my collar and said fiercely, "It's you, isn't it? The one who sent the photos, both last time and just now, it was you, right?" I sneered inwardly, finally dropping the act. I pulled his hand away and admitted readily.
Yes, it was me.
Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. She couldn't believe that her husband, who always put her first and loved her dearly, had betrayed her.
What exactly is your relationship with Emily?
Emily, behind James, shook her head at me, signaling me not to reveal it. I ignored her and said directly,
Emily and I are husband and wife, plain and simple.
Damn it! You dare to mess with me?
James couldn't accept it and cursed. He raised his fist, aiming to punch me in the face. Unfortunately for him, I reacted faster and kicked him directly. James staggered back, almost falling to the ground.
James, don't!
Emily screamed sharply. James, frustrated, became even more agitated.
You dare kick me? Do you have a death wish?
He spat out threats, but I didn't give him a chance. With the resentment and hatred for my previous life's humiliation and suffering, I threw him over my shoulder, slamming him to the ground. Then I kicked and stomped on him with all my strength.
James, didn't you already know about my relationship with Emily? Why are you pretending now and trying to turn the tables?
What do you mean? What did he already know?
Emily stopped screaming and asked in disbelief. I couldn't tell if she was truly foolish or blinded by so-called love. From the first time I met James at the hospital, I anticipated that with his suspicious and petty nature, he would secretly investigate me. Later, I sent him photos of Emily and me. Partly to provoke him. Partly to see if he would reveal to Emily that he already knew about our relationship. But he didn't. James pretended not to know. He watched Emily, without any guilt, as she feared his every glance, every action, every word, every call. The baseness of men, fully exposed. And Emily, this foolish woman, still tried to hide it from James. She repeatedly wanted to undergo surgery to maintain that so-called purity. Emily, unable to bear the shock, took a step back, muttering disbelief. Yes, how could she be willing to believe it? Emily had secretly admired James since high school. It was said that James was the class president back then, not bad at studying, and quite popular. He had always been Emily's high school crush. Even after James failed his college entrance exams, dropped out, and started working, then got married. It didn't affect the perfect image of James in her heart. However, after today, James, her high school crush, would likely crumble in her heart. In the previous life, Emily could even accept James's domestic violence against his ex-wife and make excuses for his behavior. In this life, she couldn't even accept being deceived. The double standards were clear and laughable. Emily, in a daze, collapsed to the ground, but no one paid her any attention. At this moment, my fists were still landing on James's face. To be fair, James wasn't as tall as me, nor as strong. In the previous life, if he hadn't brought a few people to help, I wouldn't have met such a tragic end at his hands. James didn't expect that someone who seemed gentle and good-tempered like me could be fiercer than him in a fight. He couldn't keep up with the punches, getting beaten into a sorry state.
James, you're not the only one who can fight. We're both men. Who's afraid of whom? I've already died once this time. It's your turn to go to the other side.
I was seeing red, unconsciously speaking of the pain I endured in the previous life. James's face twisted in fear and anger. Hearing me mention death and the other side, he got scared too.
Stop hitting me! It's just a woman. Do you have to go this far?
James thought I was just furious over Emily's betrayal. It wasn't that simple. The accumulated pain was enough to make me lose control, wanting to beat him to a pulp. James's face was covered in injuries, and he had a tooth knocked out. Emily seemed to finally snap out of it, rushing over to pull me away.
Honey, stop. Please, stop. You'll hurt him too much. Honey, I don't want James anymore. Let's live our lives well. Please stop.
I only felt disgust and hatred for Emily now. I could automatically tune out her voice, not caring at all. James, however, got agitated hearing Emily say she didn't want him. He even tried to push me away and struggled to get up. But he couldn't.
You don't want me? You think you can just discard me? You wretched woman, just wait. I won't let you off.
Emily, frightened, fell to the ground again.
Honey, maybe you should just end this. I'm scared of him.
Her words snapped me back to reality. End this? If Emily hadn't reminded me, I might have made a huge mistake. But I've been given a second chance at life. I can't let it be overshadowed by these two scumbags. I stopped, stood up, and dusted off my clothes, looking down at James lying on the ground like a defeated man.
I've already filed for divorce. Emily and I have nothing to do with each other anymore. She's all yours.
With that, I turned and walked away. James's venomous gaze turned to Emily. Behind me, Emily's shrill scream echoed.
I want to get a hymenoplasty.
Why would you want to do that?
James has a bit of a thing for virgins. If I want to be with him, I need to get it done first.
As she spoke, Emily watched my expression.
Is that really necessary?
I remained expressionless, which made her a bit uncertain, but she still confidently used my words against me.
Honey, you said you would put me first in everything. This time, I really want to fight for love. You will support me, right?
Emily looked at me with expectant eyes.
I smiled self-deprecatingly. In my previous life, I tried to stop her and ended up meeting a tragic end. This time, how could I not support her? Baby, I support you. Go ahead and pursue your love boldly.
What's wrong? What happened?
I shook my head, unsure how to explain the current situation. At that moment, Emily suddenly emerged from the closet. She seemed surprised to see Jessica there. She froze for a moment, then instinctively turned to look at me, a tear rolling down her cheek. Jessica was also taken aback to see Emily there. Emily didn't say a word, her eyes filled with determination, and she stumbled out of the house. I had an inexplicable sense of foreboding. The look Emily gave me before she left felt like a final farewell.
Are her injuries okay?
Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but what did it matter to me? I shook my head and stepped back, letting Jessica into the house. The next morning, there was big news in the city. A woman took drastic measures against a man late at night before ending her own life, suspected of having been subjected to violence. According to the report, the woman appeared in the XX neighborhood late at night, walking hurriedly with a knife in her hand. Surveillance showed that the woman was covered in bruises, a disturbing sight. She took the elevator to the 19th floor and knocked on the man's door. The moment the man opened the door, she swung the knife. The man fell instantly, blood everywhere. After confirming the man's death, the woman entered the house and jumped from the balcony. Both died one after the other. After watching the news, I couldn't quite describe my feelings. There was a mix of regret and satisfaction, a complex emotion. But ultimately, there was a sense of closure, a feeling of justice served. I thought, in this life, it wasn't all in vain. Emily gazed at me with determination in her eyes.
I want to get a hymenoplasty.
I felt a wave of unease wash over me as she continued.
James has a bit of a thing for virgins. If I want to be with him, I need to get it done first.
Her words hung in the air as she studied my reaction. I kept my expression neutral, which seemed to make her uncertain. But she pressed on, using my own words against me.
Honey, you said you would put me first in everything.
She paused, her eyes pleading with mine.
This time, I really want to fight for love. You will support me, right?
Emily's expectant eyes bore into me. I forced a smile, tinged with self-deprecation. In my previous life, I had tried to stop her and paid a heavy price. This time, I couldn't afford not to support her. I masked my disappointment with an understanding tone.
Baby, I support you. Go ahead and pursue your love boldly.
Emily's face lit up with relief, and I knew I had made the right choice, even if it pained me.